kind of messes up the synchronization that we need across the sessions. So I'm sorry for a rather abrupt ending for the last one. But what we have planned for you is a very interesting session ahead. It is about demystifying E2.0. I would like to invite up on stage the moderator for this session, no other than Vivek Paul. He needs no introduction. You met him earlier in the day. And you know, what I find fascinating about Vivek is that every role that he stepped into, he's made it a success. And you know, it's easy to have one success in your life, but you need a Steven Spielberg to be successful at everything you do. So Vivek is somebody like that. We're really privileged to have him here at this conclave. Thank you for being here, Vivek. I'm going to hand this over to you to introduce everybody else. Thank you.
Thank you. May I ask my distinguished panel to join me here? That's assuming you're mic'd up.
Yeah.
So I'm very fortunate to have a wonderful panel here. We have Vijay. Vijay is the CIO of Texas Instruments, and India, sorry, okay, Texas Instruments India, and he is going to play the balanced, sort of feet on the ground, you know, call bullshit when he sees it, kind of a role today. So thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Vivek.
Sumit is the founder and CEO of Creo, a enterprise social media company. And he's going to bring with him the learnings that he's had as he's worked with multiple companies and startups, as well as share his own experience as in the startup journey. And Gautam, come on up. Gautam is a very interesting person. He's a blogger in the HR and people space, and he will share with us what enterprise social media means from a people perspective. So thank you very much for joining us. So let me just start out the session by talking a little bit about what do we mean when we talk enterprise social media, because I'm not going to try and figure out what is the exact definition of enterprise social media, but I can tell you that we've talked between us, and what we're going to be talking about is really how do we take this concept of people being able to connect with each other, you know, from an individual perspective, connect with each other from an information perspective, and connect with each other from a task perspective, in a way that is around a business context, in a way that's around a particular deliverable, particular output, and be able to do it with all of the crowdsourcing tools that we've all heard about in terms of tagging for being able to use data, in terms of being able to search people through complex and very detailed profiles. So I think that what we're going to do is focus on that side of enterprise social media. And why is it important? Why is this whole uprise, if you will, of the networked enterprise important? And I think that what I would position in front of all of you today is the fact that this is the single biggest organizational paradigm that has emerged since the first businesses started to use the military model for organizing. So the military model for organizing was very hierarchical, you know, so-and-so reports to so-and-so, so-and-so reports to so-and-so. You take a task, you break it down into multiple pieces, and you roll it out. What's happening with the networked enterprise is a completely different model. What you're seeing is the emerging not of something that's a flow down, but actually what's called an emergent property or a flow up, in the sense that the combined enterprise has a different characteristic and a different personality than its individual components. And as a result, it's very unpredictable, which makes it very difficult for people to really accept and adopt. But it creates an incredible amount of strength because highly networked enterprises have, you know, the ability to be able to move really fast. Highly networked enterprises have the ability to do innovation faster and more of it because they have the ability to find people with diverse backgrounds, with interest, to be able to resolve problems. And highly networked enterprises have the ability for what's called graceful degradation, which means that they have the ability to be much more resilient, be much more stable. So certainly if you think about this as a dramatically different organizational paradigm, it becomes clear that as we look at the future, every company is going to be socially networked internally and with its externally partners, whether it's customers, whether it's demand chain, whether it's supply chain. So if that's the case, then certainly this is something we should all be getting on the bandwagon of. So as you can tell, I am a firm believer in the fact that this Enterprise 2.0 is kind of the unavoidable wave of the future. But just because it's the unavoidable way that organizations will end up does not mean that the path getting there is easy. And so I was thinking that as we have assembled this panel, perhaps we can get some perspectives from them. And maybe Vijay, you can start the conversation by talking about sort of, feet on the ground. What's the realistic view from a CIO's perspective about rolling out Enterprise 2.0?
Thanks, Vivek. Can you hear me? All right. So I guess I'm the designated bad guy in this. I'm going to start by saying at the top level, Enterprise 2.0 is almost like a solution in search of a problem. This is not to deny that there is changes happening in how people work. There's changes happening in how people collaborate. There's changes happening in how your customers want to speak with you. So most of you have, being startups, have customers you need to interact with on a regular basis. So there's a lot of changes that are happening in the workforce, in the workplace, that definitely provide opportunities or create problems for us to deal with. And so that I completely agree with. What the realistic angle or the bad guy angle that I'm talking about is more from the perspective of when you brand something Enterprise 2.0, you immediately create a bit of a religion around it, which kind of puts off a lot of people. Now, I'm speaking from a large enterprise, but I'm sure if you're a consumer of services like this, if you have a problem to solve where you want to connect one set of people doing certain kind of activities to either another part of your organization or another part of your customer base, you have a problem to solve. And we have a similar problem in larger organizations. And we have worked on this. We've deployed what are called Enterprise 2.0 tools. But what I found really is unless you know what your problem is, a tool is just a tool. So Enterprise 2.0 is great. It provides new technology, gives us new ways of solving old problems. And it gives us new ways of solving problems that are emerging now. But the key part you need to figure out, in my opinion, is not the technology part, whether it's Enterprise 2.0 or 3.0 or 1.0, is what is it that you're trying to do? I'll give you an example. I think 5 years ago, so Texas Instruments is mostly what we call an intermediate product maker. So we don't reach out to end customers and sell our chips. Our consumers or our customers really are large cell phone manufacturers or device manufacturers who sell to you in turn as an end customer. So we don't really work with end customers. But what are the people who influence decision making are engineers in those organizations. You take a cell phone company or a projector company or things like that. The people who influence decisions are the engineers in those companies. So 5 years ago, we had this, like Vivek said, we had this aha moment that, hey, we need to find better ways of connecting with those customers. Not the purchasing guy, not the finance guy, not the CXO. Yes, we need to do all those things. But the guy who really makes your purchase decision for you and makes it stick is the engineer inside that organization. So we made this thing called, again, we were trying to be buzzword compliant as well. So we called it E2E collaboration, which is engineer to engineer collaboration. So our engineers who design products talk to engineers in, pick a name, cell phone company or a camera manufacturer. So they can talk about how do you use the product, how do you use this product versus another product. If I have this problem, can I solve it together with you? So we had this 5 years ago, and that's kind of, to me, Enterprise 2.0 as well, before we started calling it Enterprise 2.0. So where you have a clear problem, it works really well. But where I'm a little skeptical, to be honest, is when you start calling Enterprise 2.0 the next big thing since sliced bread, et cetera. Because the problems it's solving are age-old problems. Those problems have existed for a while now. Yes, people's approaches to solving them are changing. The Gen Y or the newer generation wants to do Facebook for the enterprise, things like that. So, but those are things that are more, in my opinion, just, let's call it fluff, to cut to the chase, right? What you really need to figure out is what your problem is in terms of getting information from where it exists to where it's needed, and how do you make that path as quick and as smooth as possible. And that's where I do think there's a lot of value in specific things we can do, whether it's wikis or things like that. But I'm a little resistant to buying into this whole religion thing around Enterprise 2.0.
That's very helpful, and I think that what you rightly said is this is not a technology problem, and at the same time, I think that people is the key to the solution. So, Gautam, maybe you can comment a little bit about how do you bring people into the equation?
First of all, my Twitter ID is @GautamGhosh, so if any of your questions don't get addressed here because of lack of time, tweet it out to me. Sumit is Anand Sumit, with a double E. So let's start with that. I personally think large enterprises are not ready for Enterprise 2.0. What makes sense most is a tabula rasa, startups who are looking to collaborate with their engineers, their sales guys, who are spread throughout the world or throughout a country. And really, and the interesting thing is, I was at a consulting startup, and we tried out one of these tools. And we thought, hey, we are a social media consulting firm, so this should come automatically to us. And we had our, bring your own device to work. So if I had a netbook and somebody else had an iPad and somebody else had a MacBook, we got our own devices to work and we would work out. So we were really open and collaborative that way. But to get the same solution to be used by 16 people sitting in the same office was tough. We would still prefer to use email until my CEO said, hey, I'm not looking at email, put it on the tool. And then somebody said, hey, but I have a netbook. And my netbook, I can only run Chrome. If I have to use this, I have to use Firefox, and it crashes my netbook because I have a 1 GB RAM. So, I can't work on this. And then we really had to figure out, even in a progressive social media consulting startup, which is telling people how to use social media, you find the resistance to using an internal social collaboration tool because, people will always find an excuse for not doing what they are uncomfortable with. They used to email, they will share information just with those folks. It's also a lot about saying, what do I put out there? Do I put out there stuff which is perfect because my coworkers are going to be judging me? Or do I put out stuff that is, half-baked so that I can get feedback on it and I can improve? So I think it's a mindset shift, and the other factors that will impact all these are how organizations use other processes like a reward process or a promotion process, and how that will impact what people are doing. So if I only get rewarded in my organization for my individual goals, then collaboration is the last thing on my mind. So the tool is, as we all agree, there's a tool, but the culture that is shaped is not just by the tool, it's by processes, practices, structures. So if the information flow that is valued is me going to my boss and my boss talking to his peer and his peer then going to his subordinate, and nobody will give me information unless I take that route, and collaboration is frowned upon or not seen as useful, then I can be the lone evangelist for that social process, but the organization will beat me down. So, and it's typically true of large enterprises. So large enterprises have made shifts, but it's made shifts when it has to be driven by the top leadership. So as an interesting example, I was talking to this other tool manufacturer and tool developer, social tool developer, who said one of the big successes was in the steel industry. I said, steel industry, how is that possible? He said, well, everybody is over 45, so everybody wants to impress the boss. And the boss was the young scion of the founder who went to the US, said, hey, we need this tool. And suddenly everybody said, hey, the CEO is using this tool. And if I have to connect to the CEO, I better start using that tool. And it was a feature-rich tool. The only thing that took off in that whole list of features was microblogging, because I just have to type 140 characters. So if I have to connect and show my boss, what am I doing, and I can see my boss updating, today I met this customer, today I sent this proposal, and keeping all of it involved, so it's basically structures, systems, processes, all these need to be tweaked around if you really want to get the benefit of Enterprise 2.0.
So I think that what's really been interesting is hearing about the fact that you got to have a purpose, you got to know what you're trying to do, and trying to make sure that we don't have a situation where people don't show up because either the supporting structures, supporting culture is not there, or because there's no sort of clear goal behind it. I think that Sumit and I were discussing earlier about the fact that how you implement this is critical, because there are only two kinds of internal social networks. They're either dynamic or they're dead. So there's no such thing as partial success in this world. And given that, how you roll it out becomes very important. Vijay, you were mentioning that for a smaller startup, and Gautam, you were also saying that for a sort of tabula rasa, this is in some ways easier. But I was wondering, Sumit, if you can share your insights on when it works, what do you need to do to make it work?
Right. Thanks, Vivek. I think I would like to start with just telling you that one of the first few articles which I wrote about Enterprise 2.0 being a vendor was Enterprise. Enterprise 2.0 equals to failure 2.0. The reason being, in the previous generation of the same collaboration and knowledge management technologies, people went about it blindly, just taking up technologies, implementing and expecting them to work for them, and knowledge getting managed automatically. Knowledge was always social. And we never had, wiki blogging or that kind of a phenomena which made it social at that time. So the reason for failure in the previous generation is we need to avoid those failures for it to be successful today. And the reasons why it failed, first of all, it didn't have the purpose. Most of the times we didn't put the business problem first and then apply the tool. We took the tool and then looked at how to apply it. The whole world is using DM, so let's put document management, let's put portals, let's have portals with portlets to connect multiple sources or whatever. The whole world went about it, and today you don't even hear about most of these technologies existing. So it needs to have a purpose, it needs...
Move it up a little.
Maybe you just hold it up.
Yeah, just hold it up maybe.
Can you hear me now?
Don't
Am I
use
audible? Some problem with the mic? Yeah, is it? Yeah, I think it's better now. So that's the whole thing. So first is why, to avoid that failure, we need to first make it sure that we have that purpose in place. What is that business problem that we are trying to solve? If we don't have that clarity, any tool, any implementation from the IBMs of the world or from a startup is going to fail for sure. Then comes the other aspect of it, what we talked about, the people part of it. Is your culture ready for it? Because it's ultimately about people socially sharing knowledge or collaborating. If you don't have that kind of a culture, it's never going to be a success. I remember, 2003, I did an implementation in Indian Oil Corporation of a unified portal with communities of practice and document management and groupware and all, and won IBM Beacon Award 2003. But it was utter failure at people level. Why? Because it was scientists in a PSU using that particular tools who believed that hoarding knowledge makes them more powerful. So the culture itself was not in place. So if your culture is not totally conducive to it, is not going to be supportive of it, you need to first work on that part of the problem before applying a particular tool. You can always apply it enterprise-wide or at what particular scope that you're looking for. So purpose, then comes the people, and then comes the technology. Fine, now when you talk about the purpose also, you need to have an idea of how to, you are going to implement it. So what, there's a quote I normally say is that, an idea is like a baby. Easy to conceive, but painful to deliver. And that's the reason, and most of the companies fail there because they don't ideate enough on how do they want to apply it. They just take the shrink-wrap product, the packaged product, and apply it as it is. Maybe it won't work for you. The kind of business scenario or the kind of business problem you're trying to solve, you have to look at the usability aspects. You have to see how your people work, in what format it will be more usable and user-friendly for those people. So idea is, and most of the people shy away, so you need to spend time thinking on that. So these three things put together is basically overall, is the recipe for success. Obviously, there has to be management support and all, which we all know, without that kind of a support, it's not there. So identify who are your evangelists inside, who are the people who are anyway using such tools on the web, who are most active on Facebook or the Twitter or whoever. Make them your evangelists. These are the bottom 1%, 2% who will initially use it. Take stories from them and then replicate it across the enterprise to motivate others to join. So one of the suggestions which I give HR people is that just spread a rumor that HR is watching this platform, who all are sharing, who all are collaborating. Just as a rumor, don't have an official mail. That rumor might do wonders. So I think that's all what I have to share. Maybe we'll share more. As
so I think that if I can summarize that, it really is make sure you have a clear purpose. Bring the right people to it. Maybe one other point that I'd add is start small, because that helps you clarify that purpose and that helps you bring the right people to it easier than just having something that's thrown out there. And once you've got those key elements in place, then make sure that you know what discussions are going on and how are they pertinent to the purpose. Once that ball gets rolling, I mean, think about it. eBay started as a candy dispenser trading machine. It began to trade everything. So starting small will allow you to have a nice extrapolation from whatever core group you started all the way out. So let me come back to the panel, and maybe Vijay, I can start with you again and ask you, as you think about being a potential buyer, a CIO of a fairly large company, what are the kinds of solutions you would like to see coming? You've got a bunch of entrepreneurs in the room. What would you like them to do for you?
Thanks, Vivek. You kind of started me off in the right direction here with the start small thing. So let me start with a real example we went through a couple of years ago. I know most of you are startups, so this may not translate well, but how many people work in companies that have a corporate specified smartphone? You shall use this. Anyone here? Yeah. How many of you, so keep your hands up, please. Keep your hands up. How many of you like what your corporate tells you to use? Just if you like what your corporate is specifying, keep your hand up. Well, that's what I thought. So we have the same situation, right, in Texas Instruments. So we specify a certain device because it passes the CIO's checklist of security, manageability, cost, blah, 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 blah. And then this little thing happened 4 years ago when Steve Jobs walked up on stage and introduced the iPhone. And everyone's like, hey, iPhone, who's going to care? It's not an enterprise-ready phone. It's not, it's designed it's a toy for people who want fancy, flashy things. And where are we now? Everyone wants an iPhone. So we went through that, and I'm kind of circling into the answer to Vivek's question here, is we basically said, okay, fine, we'll support the phone that we support. But if you want to use a different phone, you support yourself. And that was the spark. So we have this community. So we have an enterprise collaboration tool, like one of the E2.0 tools that everyone's deployed. And that set off a spark where people all the people who wanted iPhones got together, they created a community. And they basically said, we don't need you to do anything. Just let us connect to our email, and we'll take care of the rest. So as an IT guy, that's wonderful, because I'm seen as more open to new ideas. I can let people use new things, and my cost goes down because I do nothing. There's 10,000 iPhone users inside the company, and my cost of support is 0 because I just let them work on it. So the point I'm making is, I think the key thing, if you're an entrepreneur, as a provider of E2.0 solutions, is figure out that one spark that customers can, your large enterprises or small enterprises can pick up and grow into a bigger fire, I guess, spark. But that's one. So find the right solution. So find the niche that will work to collaborate, to create this. The second thing, which is kind of converse of this, is don't try to be Facebook for the enterprise, because there is a Facebook already, and it's probably better than what you can create in a short period of time. So let's not try to do this big bang. We're going to deploy a collaboration account to everyone, and everyone shall blog kind of thing. The third thing is, if you're a user, whether you're a user or a provider of a solution in this space, I would say, I think Sumit touched upon this earlier, pick the influencers quickly. Find out who are the people who are passionate about it, who will kind of keep it going, who will create a critical mass of information that people won't want to come to. Because at the end of the day, the way I look at it, the tools are just a pipeline. The key problem we're trying to solve is there's information about something in one part of the organization, and there are people who want that information in a different part of the organization. And all we try to do, anything we do, is try to create channels for that to flow. So if you find people who are providers of information that others want to consume, I think half your problem is solved. that's, sorry, was that a question? So that's broadly how I look at it, Vivek.
Great. So, I was just thinking, Gautam, that what you described was that, how fitting Enterprise 2.0 was for startups. And I was thinking that, one of the smaller companies that we had spoken to said that we're really worried that this will be killing productivity because everybody will become a blogger. You're a blogger, so what do you think about that?
The two aspects. One is, most of these tools are actually integrating with typical business platforms within the enterprise. So, for example, if you update a sales record or you have to update a purchase order, it goes out socially to people who are connected, your team members, etc. So the cost of information of your FYY mails is, the clutter is actually coming down. So people getting inundated with, irrelevant mails, getting BCC'd and CC'd, that is coming down because the for your information kind of information is now embedded within the collaboration platforms itself. The other fact is, and there was this interesting article I came across, one of the large Indian IT services, India, US IT services firms actually did a study on their own internal blogging and found out that the bloggers were more productive at an average and spent more years in the company at an average of at least 3 years more than the people who were not blogging. So here are people who are willing to share their knowledge, who are more productive, and who are typically more engaged at their work. So they said, hey, if we nurture these people who are blogging, and if we actually take care of them, they're going to be much more valuable set of employees than the people who are not blogging, and maybe that will help them, the people who are not blogging, also to share. I saw a tweet by the CIO of this firm saying in 5 years, all their blog put together by this whole group of people have got 1 million comments internally. So it's not just the bloggers who are blogging, the bloggers are urging the people who are just reading to also add their 2 bits. So it's actually having a ripple effect. So there's one guy creating and 9 other guys curating and commenting on that, liking that. So you actually know what the whole organization thinks. If you want to actually do some kind of big data analysis, analytics on that, and you could do sentiment analysis, do idea analysis, and find out, hey, this is what my 50,000 workforce today thinks, feels, breathes. There's no way you can get that by a traditional HR employee satisfaction survey where people will answer politically correct answers. So I think that's a big aspect of getting people to be blogging, because at some level they are making their work visible. So that's the interesting way a friend of mine described it. Make your work visible, and that will ensure that other people will say, hey, you're doing this great, I'll borrow this something for you, or you should have tried out this other idea. So next time you do that, you try out, you find a cheaper, faster, better way of doing things. And I think that is eventually the biggest beneficiary of all that is going to be the organization as a whole.
But that's great that there's actually data now, at least from this one company, that proves that it's not a distraction. It's not something that takes away from the productivity of an enterprise, but actually adds to that.
What I find unnerving about some firms who are evaluating Enterprise 2.0 tools is, hey, we've got all these young kids coming out of college. We've blocked Facebook and Twitter and all these social tools. Can we give them an enterprise Facebook so that they are not unhappy with us? And that is a wrong approach to take. And I think companies that say, just we've got to have this because we have a young workforce who like Facebook, they're not going to ever like your internal Facebook if all their friends are outside.
That's right. So you got to have that business purpose in mind. There's got to be a direction. Sumit, you not only are a provider in this space, but you're also a startup. So, you've eaten your own dog food, so to speak. So tell us what it's like in a startup using an Enterprise 2.0 tool.
Yeah. Am I audible now? Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it is actually, most of our work or sharing actually happens entirely on Creo itself, what we use. And the entire thing that we use is what the demo is on the site. So if you got onto my site and log in, you see all that sharing which employees are doing among themselves. So we learn every day about different technologies, different problems related to the same, and that's what we share. Though we all are in the same room, but our sharing typically happens like that. We do a lot of sharing informally, directly we can just speak across the cubicle with the other guy. But we still do that because typical problem that happens in a technology scenario is, oh, I fixed that bug, I remember. But where did I find that page? Oh, I found something on that forum or something and how fixed it, and now again I'm facing that problem. Where is my bookmark? Oh, you go get into your bookmarks itself are in a mess because there are maybe 10,000 of them. So it's very difficult to find. And discovery is one of the key problems, and that's what it solves for us in a small team. And that's the key thing. And I would like to add to something what Gautam said about the participation. And when it comes to research reports, you should not always go by all of them because there are negative reports also. So people do talk about that if it is all about status updates. It happens about business initially, and after some time people are talking about, okay, my cat fell sick or my dog died or something like that. So those are the challenges you need to overcome also in a way. And when it comes to participation, there is something called as participation inequality. So which says that only 1% of the total users will actually be contributing. Rest all might be reading, and that's true even for Wikipedia. Out of the millions of users, there are just a few hundred or thousands who are actually contributing. So you need not look at, that 100% of the people are coming and sharing knowledge or sharing, good kind of content or whatever, or not really trivial stuff. On the other hand, trivial stuff at times, but which is more social in nature, also helps, which basically employee bonding and all that, which ultimately impacts the kind of environment it gives to your employees.
So before we continue with more questions for the panel from me, I was wondering if anybody here had any questions for any of the four of us. Go ahead.
I think we're getting this wrong somewhere. The idea of Enterprise 2.0.
They're saying it's on, so don't switch.
The goal is, and it's not top down, it is bottom up, and it's coming from, and you join at will, leave at will. So the communities that work are very different, and they work differently. And what we are trying to do here is what we call traditionally an enterprise, which is very hierarchical, very corporate. We're trying to force it into a mold of something which is by its very nature not hierarchical. It's not going to work out.
Is that specifically to, or anyone can answer?
No, you can comment, anyone of you.
Yeah.
All right, I'll take first shot at it. So I actually agree with you. What we're trying to do is superimpose two modes of organization. There's the hierarchical organization within the enterprise, and there's the self-organizing nature of the community networks. We're trying to superimpose one on top of the other, and that's why I started off saying I'm a skeptic, because it works when there is a match, when there is a niche for it. It doesn't work, because the CEO says everybody will blog, it's not going to happen. So to that extent, I agree with you. But I think what it can do, having started off as a skeptic, I'm kind of slowly calibrating towards the middle here, but because, this is my experience again, right? What it can do is, there are cases where information, again, I view this as in the information-centric thing, right? There's a lot of times information takes a long time to travel either within the organization or from the organization to people you want to share it with outside the organization. So my E2E example is a situation, right? So there would be a time when the engineer in, let's say, I don't want to name names, but a cell phone company would say, hey, I'm trying to design with this TI part. Will it work with this other part that I'm doing? It would go to the sales account manager and travel all the way down to the product group, and it'll flow all the way back out again. So that's obviously not a good way to do it. But that was the only way at that point that seemed to make sense. But now what makes sense is, hey, we create this forum where we say, if I'm putting out the new application processor for phones, I have a team of product designers that's available for customers to talk to. So they ask questions, and the questions are replied to. There's discussion, debate, disagreement, whatever. So you cut through the whole middle layer, right? So that's where it works. So to me, that's why Enterprise 2.0 is not this whole reboot.
No boss is going to say you went around me and talked to the other guy in the other department, and you didn't even tell me I was what in the group, this, that, and other. I don't see this.
So may I jump in? I think that the two are not inconsistent. Yeah. I think that what Vijay is saying is that what ends up happening is, if you think about when we talked about launching this, that you focus on a specific problem. So let's say that you focused on a specific problem and brought a team together. So for example, one of the customers that Kinetic Glue had was the marketing department of this retailer that wanted to use it to launch some campaigns. So what they did was they brought this group together. Somebody decided, a hierarchical nature of an organization decided what that first use case was going to be. Having said that, once that use case is created, once people get onto that network, there is no boss. So as a result, what ends up happening is that it's a very egalitarian system once people get on around that problem. But what ends up happening is that a new kind of, not a hierarchy, but a new kind of nomenclature emerges. So Sumit described that 1% of the folks generate 99% of the volume. That's true, by the way, of telecom networks as well. If you think about the network servers around the world, 1% of the nodes control 99% of the traffic. So new terminology gets created where there are the creators. These are the people who are the 1% content creators. Then there are what are called curators. And the curators are roughly 30% of the enterprise. And these curators emerge. And what the curators do is they're the ones who do the forwards. They're the ones who say, look at this, add some comment to that, feel like they have to express their viewpoint on all content already being created. Again, it's not that a highly networked individual is superior to a lower networked individual. One could be a brilliant scientist and one could be very social. But these are new lexicon. These are new kinds of people that are beginning to emerge from an organization. And a smart organization will know that I'm not going to lose my hierarchy, but I'm not going to lose this either, because this is orthogonal to my basic structure, and I can gain a lot of value from this. So within that highly networked individual as well, there are some, once you can see the network map, that have what are called the weak links. The weak links are what make the 6 degrees of separation possible. These are the people who can connect people from one place to another very rapidly. And now, all of a sudden, a company that has done this well along both axes, which is run their business well, and at the same time have created this ability for people to connect on an egalitarian and yet different lexicon basis, the kind of output that you get from that is of a dramatically different level. And once people begin to taste that fruit around a specific business purpose, they begin to let go. The hierarchy begins to let go, and what you end up seeing here, the emergence of these new kinds of personalities, if you will, begin to grow. And that combination is what makes Enterprise 2.0 the success and the reason why people are interested in it.
What you're saying is that we are changing the structure of the enterprise from hierarchical to
something. That's right, something different. That's why I said this is the biggest change in organizational paradigms since, sort of the hunter-gatherer phase.
May I jump in?
Absolutely, please do.
So one of the most hierarchical organizations in the world you can find is the Central Intelligence Agency in the US. And they've connected all their agents through a social network. They bring out, used to bring out a quarterly report on where, each country is, to be shared with all of its employees. By the time the quarterly report came out, the world had changed. So what they did was they connected all their field agents and their whatever they called managers in the various countries and with the CIA headquarters in the US. And they can, by combining a social network, information access from each other. So everybody submits his or her report into that piece. It doesn't go from, the whole validation place. I give it to my boss gives it to the continent boss. The continent boss then hands it back to headquarters where it gets, rechecked for facts, etc. They can put together that report, which was done once a quarter, down to, once in 2 weeks, where the information of what's happening in which country's politics is much more relevant than anything else. So it's not that, and I won't hope that the CIA will ever go from a hierarchical structure to a network structure totally. It can't afford to. But they are utilizing one aspect of social networking within the organization to solve what was earlier an issue with being relevant. So it would go to the president and the president say, hey, this is not relevant, this changed. The newspapers reported it 3 months ago. Why are you reporting it to me now? So that is also an impact.
I think I'll just try to add to it and try to answer it in a different way. because I'm not sure whether you're fully satisfied with the answers till now, because you are objecting to the thing that organizations are anyway hierarchically organized or structured. And then we are not talking about that you change and make your decision-making processes completely social. There will be some bit of hierarchy as far as flow to decisions or something is concerned. And E2.0 typically is applied more from communication and knowledge sharing point of view. So when it is, let the communication and knowledge sharing be free-flowing, let be free-forming. So a typical example, let's take, in society as such, our families, or even schools for that matter, are hierarchically organized in a way. But knowledge never is always socially shared. We learn maybe from our peers by talking to someone or by talking across or communicating. So knowledge sharing is not really hierarchically flowing. So that's the difference. So we are not really saying that in order to apply E2.0, your decision making and the structure of the organization also need to become flat or totally social in nature. There will be a structure, and it can be. You can always apply a layer of sharing and communication which is social in nature.
Any other questions? Yeah. Go ahead, yeah.
So, I have experience selling these things for the last 5 years. When I say things, because...
Would you speak into the mic, please?
Yeah, hello. So I have some experience hawking technologies which enabled collaboration. And what I found, and this is interesting, one size never fits all. And the more you look into an organization, TI was a customer, no organization, had a culture that geared itself towards collaboration. It always started on a need-based, platform, sort of then progressed to some freedom of information, being shared at the lower levels, more than the upper echelons. But then if you had one guy at the top, it was a lot faster. I have stories where a HR head could override a CIO and start a process. And this is a pharma company in India.
So I think that, the point you're making, I'll try and dig the question out from under that, but, the point you were making is that there's no one size fits all in this environment. And so your question is, can these tools be adaptive enough to varying organization cultures?
Absolutely. It's like water, in a container. So this could take the shape of the container, and the container is your organization. And what shape it takes will depend on who you're talking to. So the more you, plumb into an organization, and the more people you cover, especially line of business, it flies. And that's because it's need-based. You're finding a guy who actually needs this, and not because it's going in as a social tool.
That's right. So the whole, I think that what you're saying is pretty consistent with what was said here, that buying something because it's a social tool is actually not the right way to think about it. Buying something that is creating a solution for a problem where, the ability for people to interact is a key part of that solution is the right thing.
Even TI, for example, I know for a fact that there was a time, I don't know whether it's still on, where they would actually hire somebody, and the guy also got a license to collaborate.
Say again?
You also got a license to use a certain tool to collaborate. I'm talking about WebEx right now.
Yeah.
Great, thanks. We had another question back here. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Prasant, and I work in a software company, right? So when we say social, it's very good. When it gets into a company, it becomes really the other side, because the HR thinks, okay, sorry, you are here to work, not to engage with your friends, not to engage with your colleagues. Now let's see another section. Like, we all have this lovely intranet in our offices, which is like for ages have never been changed. So my question is like, I've seen I have a couple of friends in IT companies, and nobody is having kind of a social kind of enterprise 2.0 or something like that kind of engagement tool between employees. Forget those group discussion forums, because if you say something wrong, that discussion is closed. So that's one thing. My first question is like, when would be the market in terms of companies would be ready, or when can we see the change? The second thing is that, do you actually think that companies which will go ahead and say that, okay, we are enterprise 2.0, will be an incentive to employees to retain them? Well, I'm just thinking like, they can also say that, okay, fine, we are a social company, we are an engaging company, and for the next generation, that could be one attraction, and can that be a retention kind of incentive to people.
So maybe we'll start with the second question first, and maybe Gautam, you can take that, and the first question, maybe Sumit, you can take that. So the second question was around, you know, HR thinks of this as being a terrible distraction, and would it ever be a competitive asset, particularly when it comes to recruiting people?
No. So yes, HR in most firms think that, you know, if I give people tools, they will waste time on it. Tools are primarily social. The thing is, they thought the same about email when it was launched. So email would only go to X, Y, Z designations. I'm not sure if any of you are old enough to remember that time when, you know, only the top 3-4 levels of the organization would get email and nobody else would get email, because the objection was, if I give email to that guy down in the corporate hierarchy, he's going to, you know, clog up my server, send forwards, waste time. And same thing was true for if you've used MSN Messenger, the enterprise class, or, you know, GE used, for example, same time by IBM Lotus. And so in every case, so there are these functions, HR, legal, whose job it is to think of all the things that can bad will go, and therefore raise an objection saying, so give them their you know, space. That's their job to do. To say, if things go wrong, what will we do? The other aspect is, I don't think it will ever become a attraction tool for organizations, because if that is the main reason why you are implementing an Enterprise 2.0 tool, it will not work.
I'll rather agree and disagree both with him. First thing, which is more about, you know, when Enterprise 2.0 becomes kind of a mainstay and pretty common across enterprise, I think the time has already come. Last 3 years, I really struggled, you know, when I used to go and pitch and, you know, sell the idea to various companies, but I'm seeing that change. You know, the amount of awareness and acceptance of the same is increasing. And the same thing happened with email, the same thing happened with internet initially. People were not open to it. There was just few people having mailboxes, only one terminal where you can go and, you know, access internet and now everyone has it. Why? Because thanks to WebSense. But that thing of control is still there. But on email, it is not there. And with these social tools, again, that thing eventually will happen. And I think the next 5 years are the best time for these to grow and people to adopt it. Because by doing this, not just within your enterprise, but in your ecosystem, with your partners, with your customers, how you're going to create a lot of competitive advantage. And today, tell me one company which doesn't have an SAP or like a CRM and an ERP or an SCM. That used to be one of the reasons to differentiate, but no more that difference is there. So how do you create that difference is by increasing the productivity and the innovation capacity of your employees. And you can only do it by using such social platforms. Make them share more knowledge, make them spend less time on Googling and solving problems, let them tap into the collective intelligence of the enterprise, and you make them more productive. So once the businesses start getting hit a certain kind of a wall or a roof, which is already happening, that there's no more further scope for improvement, we need to think of different ways. Social will start picking up majorly, and all these small objections, anyway, they're not major, there are ways to work around those and solve those. So all that also will start happening. As far as retention is concerned, I don't think that people will stay in a company just because it has a platform like this. But definitely people would consider that it will become a part of the culture. That shows the culture that this company has a very open culture. It let people voice their opinions, share their ideas, and, you know, sense the pulse of whatever the employees are feeling or, you know, sharing or whatever. And that kind of a thing will definitely help retain people.
So I don't think you should get too overly worried about HR. I think I like the way that you described it, that, you know, all cars need engines and need brakes. You know, so if a car doesn't have a brake, it's going to go crash. If it doesn't have an engine, it won't go anywhere. And there are some functions that are designed to be brakes. And so all you got to do is to make sure that there's an engine that goes with it, which is that business unit leader, that functional leader that wants to get some value out of this. And they are then the ones that actually are able to show the progress and make that car a success. I think we have time for one last question. Why don't you go ahead?
My question is to Sumit. See, actually, if a small company or SME is planning to become an enterprise 2.0, what would be your advice? What kind of content which can be ported onto 2.0?
You mean to use or to rather produce a solution in this space?
One company is planning to go enterprise 2.0. What kind of content which you will advise to publish on social media?
I think, first of all, it depends in which kind of industry or space you are in. So, but largely it should be related to what is the most critical knowledge you want to capture and share. You want to retain, because typically in startups what happens, the attrition rates are very high. And you don't want knowledge to exit with the people. So all the more important to retain the critical knowledge, which is typically related to how a particular, let's say if you're a technology product company or even a services company, that how we serviced a particular customer, how we designed a particular service or solution for them, or how did that particular sale happen. So a lot of these kind of things which were individual related, that kind of a knowledge which is more tacit in nature, and that you can capture through these discussions as well as posts which could be there. And these could always give a reference to the new guy who comes and joins in. Plus, whatever is your domain area, any knowledge related to that is, that's the best way to share is the social way is there. Because you can't conduct a training program in IT or today's, not just IT in any scenario, because technologies and the new concepts are emerging every day. The entire codified knowledge base of the world doubles every 11 or 12 hours. So, you know, you wake up on a Saturday, that's Nick Bontis how he says, that, you know, on Saturday night you sleep and then Sunday morning when you wake up, you're double more ignorant than what you were the previous day. That's the impact. So in such a world, you need to capture what is the most, so see, information is abundant. So ultimately, idea is to retain what is the best and more meaningful for you. So curate and get the best gems out of that and retain that so that your people don't, everyone is not going and, you know, trying to find the, once you find the needle from the haystack, solve your problem, keep it in a library so that it's easy to find. So a social kind of a platform provides that library, and where searching and all that typically happens by Googling, etc. So you need to make that library of knowledge of, you know, tacit or explicit thing, which is there for you to retain, and you don't basically, you know, get any kind of productivity getting affected because of that.
Gautam, any closing comments from you?
Essentially, I just was wondering, how are we using it? So we are a 25 people company, startup, UK based, 2 of us in India, rest of the product team in the UK, 1 person in the US. We typically use it to keep track of what competition is doing. Competition launched a new feature, get that press release out and share it on the internal platform so that we know, you know, what features are we competing against and what the press is saying about us, what the press is saying about our competition. Any influencer on Twitter makes a comment about us, about our competitor, capture that. If we need to actually then reach out, somebody will say, I'll get back to this person. So there's a threaded discussion saying, you know, why this person is wrong, how do we actually, you know, take that decision. This person seems to know XYZ person in the company, who will be best suited to reach out and influence that influencer is the way we actually deal with it. So it's a very market-focused strategy that we, an internal platform, because, you know, sending off an email to 5 people and then, you know, figuring out that they haven't seen the whole and these are actually now mobile also. So they have, so the one that we use has a iOS application, the one that is attached to a CRM system also has an iOS application. So at every given point of time, if you are, most of the folks are using iPhones, everybody is updated what's happening within the organization.
Vijay, any closing comments from you?
Sure. Thanks, Vijay. So I think kind of taking on from where Sumit and Gautam have left us. So I have, I think, a couple of things I would like to kind of leave with the audience. Right? One is, to your question, what should a startup focus on? I think, to me, you need to figure out what information are you constantly searching for, spending a lot of time on? What information are your customers spending a lot of time on? And that, to me, is the more important part than figuring out, you know, how do I archive? How do I do this? What do I use tagging? Do I use blogging? All that stuff. The second thing is, I think whether or not you like it, and someone made this point about collaboration not being widespread, right? Whether you like it or not, collaboration is happening in your workspace. It's happening at the water cooler, it's happening at the coffee machine, it's happening in the car park, it's happening somewhere. So a lot of it is valuable for your organization. So you just need to figure out which parts you need to kind of put a structure around. Structure is a bad thing sometimes, but put some sort of enablement around to make it reusable. And the third thing is, unless, I'm going to say this a little more controversial thing, unless you're in the business of providing enterprise 2.0 solutions, I think someone made this point, if your argument is I'm an E2.0 company and you're not an enterprise E.2 solution provider, you probably have your focus wrong. I want to leave it with that.
All right, thank you. So thank you very much to the panel. Really appreciate you sharing our thoughts.
Thanks,
and you know, I'm sure they'll be around if there's any other questions that are left over.
Thank you.
I'd request Sharat Sharma to hand over mementos to our moderators and panelists on stage.
Thank you.
Meanwhile, ladies and gentlemen, time for you to pull out your mobile phones, and I'd like to draw your attention to the screens. For feedback on this session, the numbers are there on your screen. This is for the whole Aura 2.